The wind howled outside, blowing dust and sand across the empty land. Mark Dalton sat alone in his small metal home on the edge of the mining colony. His hands were dirty with oil, and a broken tool lay across his lap. He was a simple man, a human. He fixed machines for food and traded old parts for water. Most nights were quiet, but this night something changed. There was a knock at the door. Mark frowned. No one ever came this far out, especially not after dark. He stood slowly, picked up a small light, and walked to the door. His boots made a soft sound on the metal floor. Another knock. Louder this time. He opened the door. At first he saw nothing, just dust and rain. Then he looked down. An alien woman knelt in the mud. Her clothes were torn. Her skin, light violet, was covered in dirt and bruises. Her hair was messy and soaked with rain. She looked up at him with large, tired eyes. Behind her stood two small children, thin, silent, and shaking. She bowed her head. "Please," she said softly, "let us stay, just for one night." Mark stared at her, unsure what to say. "I don't have much," he replied. "We don't need much," she whispered. "Only a roof. And safety." He looked at the children. The little girl clung to her mother's back. The boy held a cracked water bottle. Mark saw fear in their eyes. "Real fear." He stepped aside. "Come in." The woman gasped quietly. "Thank you. Thank you." She helped the children through the door. Mark closed it behind them, locking the cold wind outside. The small home was warm. Simple. A table, a small stove, one bed, and a broken heater buzzing in the corner. The children sat on the floor near the heater, holding each other for warmth. The woman stood dripping wet and looked at Mark. "My name is Sarian," she said. "These are my children, Rila and Tovin." Mark nodded. "I'm Mark." She bowed her head again. "You're kind. Most wouldn't have opened the door." "I've seen hungry eyes before," he said. She didn't smile. She only looked down at her shaking hands. Mark grabbed a towel and handed it to her. Then he walked to the back room and came back with a blanket. "Dry off," he said. "The kids can use this." She wrapped the towel around her shoulders and helped the children into the blanket. For a few minutes, no one spoke. Then Mark asked, "Where's your husband?" Sarian closed her eyes. "Gone," she said. "They took him when he tried to protect us. He refused to sell us." Mark said nothing. She added, "We ran. We've been running for days." He looked at her again. She was weak, but she stood tall, still guarding her children. "You don't have to run anymore," he said. "Not tonight." She looked at him with wide eyes. "You mean we can stay?" He nodded. "You can stay. I won't throw out a mother and her kids." She covered her mouth, hiding her shaking breath. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll clean, cook, work. I'll be useful. I just need you to let us live." Mark glanced at the children again. The girl had fallen asleep on her brother's shoulder. "You don't have to prove anything tonight," he said. "Rest." Sarian nodded slowly. She curled up near the children, pulling the blanket around all three of them. Mark sat back down at the table, picked up the broken tool, but didn't fix it. He watched them and wondered what kind of world would chase a family this far into dust, rain, and darkness. He didn't know her story yet, but he would. He didn't trust easily, but something about her, something about the way she begged not for herself, but for her children, touched something deep in him. Outside, the storm grew stronger. Inside, for the first time in days, the alien widow and her children slept without fear. And Mark? He didn't know it yet, but by opening his door that night, he had changed all their lives forever. The sun on this dusty moon didn't rise. It just dimmed the darkness a little. Mark lit a small cooking burner and poured water into a dented pot. The silence in his small metal home was different this morning, softer, like something fragile had entered and refused to leave. Sarian sat on the floor near the wall, her children still asleep beside her. She looked tired, but no longer afraid. Mark handed her a tin cup of warm tea. She took it with both hands and nodded. "Thank you," she said softly. He sat across from her, leaning against the wall, watching her. "You said someone took your husband," he finally said. "What happened?" Sarian didn't speak at first. She looked into the steam rising from her tea like she was searching for the words. Then she said, "We were farmers on a colony called Neraz 3. Small land. Dry, but we made it work." Mark nodded. "I've heard of it. One day, a trade ship landed. They said they needed workers, promised good pay. My husband said no." Her voice grew thin. "They didn't like hearing no. They said he was standing in the way of business, so they took him." Mark's jaw tightened. "They offered me something," she said, looking up. "They said if I agreed to belong to one of their traders, they'd let the children live." Mark's eyes narrowed. "I said no." She lowered her eyes. "I took my children and ran." Silence hung between them. "You were brave," Mark said. Sarian shook her head. "I was desperate." "Sometimes they're the same thing." She gave him a look, part disbelief, part wonder. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time. Like she was still someone. Mark glanced at the kids. "They yours by blood?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. "Rila is 6. Tovin is 8. Too young to suffer so much. They're lucky to have you." Sarian's lips trembled. "Do you know what it feels like," she said, "to be offered a bed in exchange for your family's life?" Mark didn't answer. He didn't need to. Sarian wiped a tear away with the back of her hand. "I've begged, on docks, slept in waste stations, hid under floors while soldiers searched above us." She took a shaky breath. "And last week, someone told me about a human who lives alone. Quiet, honest, kind." Mark raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't sure if you were real," she said. He sipped his tea. "I wasn't sure you were either." She almost smiled. "Why did you help us?" she asked. "Because no one else did," he replied simply. They sat in silence again. This time it felt lighter. Rila stirred. Her eyes opened slowly. She blinked at the room. Then at Sarian. "Are we still safe?" the girl whispered. Sarian pulled her close. "Yes, child, we're still safe." Mark stood and began preparing food. Nothing special, just heated ration packs and warm bread. Tovin woke next. The boy sat up straight and scanned the room like a soldier. Then relaxed when he saw Mark. He whispered something to Rila. She nodded. Then he looked at Mark and said softly, "Are you going to sell us?" Mark turned slowly. "No," he said. "Not even her?" the boy asked, pointing to his sister. Mark kneeled down. "I don't sell people," he said. "And no one touches either of you while you're under my roof." Tovin didn't reply, but he believed him, and for the first time, Tovin reached out and took the bread. Sarian watched the scene unfold with her hand over her heart. That night, after the children fell asleep again, Sarian stood outside the door, under the pale red sky. Mark joined her. "Why are you really here?" he asked. She turned to him. "Because the last man I trusted died saving me, and I don't want to die alone." Her voice was low, honest. "I don't ask for love," she said. "Just safety, a home, a man who won't sell me to survive." Mark didn't say anything, but he didn't walk away either. And in silence, standing side by side under a dead sky, something began to grow. Not love yet, but something close. Sarian woke before the sun, or whatever passed for a sun on this dead moon. She had never slept so deeply, never felt warmth like this. The children were curled beside her on the mattress Mark had laid out. A second blanket now covered them. She hadn't put it there. Mark had. She rose quietly, walked into the main room and began cleaning, dusting shelves. folding the few clothes and placing tools back where they belonged. She didn't ask permission. She needed to feel useful. When Mark stepped out of his room, already dressed for work, he paused at the doorway. "You don't have to do all that," he said. "I want to," Sarian replied. "I don't like feeling like a burden." He didn't argue. Instead, he handed her a piece of dried fruit. "Eat first, then we can argue about chores." Sarian took it, smiling slightly. "Is this what humans call kindness?" Mark raised an eyebrow. "Nah. That's just how I am before coffee." She laughed. A small, tired laugh, but it was real. Later that day, Sarian helped him in the workshed. She learned fast how to hand him tools, check wiring, and even restart an old power cell. By evening, the shed was cleaner, the machines were quieter, and the home felt less empty. Mark watched the children laugh over a simple puzzle toy he found buried in a crate. "They haven't smiled in a long time," Sarian said softly. "They'll smile more now," he replied. That night, after dinner, Mark checked the door locks twice. Something didn't feel right. He had lived alone long enough to sense when something was off. The wind outside was stronger than usual. The sky was darker, the kind of night that holds secrets. He kept a small plasma pistol near his bed, just in case. Sarian curled up with the children again. The warmth inside the home was better now thanks to the fixed heater, but a cold crept into her chest, a feeling she knew too well. Someone was watching. She didn't sleep. Around midnight, something scraped against the window. She sat up fast. Her heart pounded. Another scrape. This time longer. She rose slowly, careful not to wake the children. She stepped into the next room, eyes scanning the shadows. Then she saw it, a hand, long, pale, 3 fingers, pressed against the glass. She gasped, stepping back. A voice whispered outside. "Widow, come out. You know. You can't hide forever." Sarian froze. Her past had found her. Mark's door opened behind her. He saw her, pale, frozen, eyes wide. "What is it?" he asked. She pointed to the window. By the time he looked, the hand was gone. Only fingerprints remained. "Stay inside," Mark said firmly. He grabbed the plasma pistol and stepped out the front door. Wind whipped his coat. He scanned the dark sand, but saw no one. Then, a shadow moved fast between 2 metal crates. "Who's there?" he shouted. No answer. He stepped forward carefully, eyes sharp. A figure darted behind a broken mining cart. Mark raised the pistol. "Show yourself." Silence. Then a low voice answered, cold and familiar. "She doesn't belong to you, human. She's marked." Mark didn't lower the pistol. "She belongs to no one. Then you'll die with her." The figure vanished into the dark, too fast to chase. Mark stood still for a long time. When he returned, Sarian was waiting, children still asleep. She looked at the gun in his hand. "He was one of them," she whispered. "I figured." "I'm sorry," she said, eyes full of guilt. "I brought danger here." He stared at her for a moment, then said, "You didn't bring danger, you brought meaning." She blinked. "Meaning?" "I didn't realize how empty this place was," he said. "Until you knocked." She placed her hand gently over his. Then, "We'll fight for this meaning," she whispered. And outside in the dark, more footsteps waited. But inside, a human stood between them and the family no one else would protect. Mark didn't sleep after the window incident. He kept the lights low and checked every shadow outside the home. But no one came again. Not yet. Inside, Sarian sat beside the heater, holding a warm cup between her hands. She looked tired but focused. Rila and Tovin played quietly nearby, building towers with old bolts and nuts they found in Mark's toolbox. The silence was peaceful, but something hung in the air. A question, waiting to be asked. Mark finally spoke. "They'll come back." Sarian nodded. "Yes? They'll try to take you, the kids too." Yes? He turned to her. Do you want to keep running? She looked at her children, then shook her head. No. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. You could leave. Go somewhere hidden. I have a contact in the deep moons. He owes me a favor. Sarian was quiet. Then she said, I don't want to hide anymore. Mark raised an eyebrow. I want to build something, she continued. A place where my children are not afraid to laugh. A home where I don't have to sleep with one eye open. He listened carefully. And I want that home to be here, she said slowly. With you. Mark didn't speak. He hadn't expected it, not so soon. Not from someone who barely knew him. I know it sounds sudden, Sarian said, lowering her eyes. But I'm not asking for romance or soft words. I'm asking for survival. For unity. For peace. She paused. I'm asking you to marry me. The words echoed in the room. Rila looked up. Tovin dropped a bolt. Mark's mouth opened slightly, unsure if he heard her right. Marry you, he repeated. Yes, she said calmly. A bond, a shield. A message to anyone who comes for us. We are not alone. Mark looked away, thinking. I'm not a rich man, he said. I don't even know how to raise kids. You opened your door to strangers, she replied. That's more than most kings. He chuckled at that. Sarian leaned forward. I don't want love. I want loyalty. I want protection. I want my children to grow up under a roof that stands even during storms. Mark looked into her eyes. There was no fear there now. Only strength. Only honesty. I haven't been a husband, he said. Or a father. Not once. You became both the moment you let us in, she said softly. He was silent for a long time. Then he gave a slow nod. All right, he said. We'll make this home. Together. Sarian closed her eyes, just for a second, and exhaled. As if she'd been holding her breath for years, the children smiled. Tovin tried to hide it behind his hand. Rila clapped softly, giggling. Mark stood. If this is going to be a family, he said, then we protect it like one. He pulled open a drawer and laid out 3 objects. A radio beacon, an old rifle, and a scanner. Tomorrow, he said, we start preparing. Sarian stood beside him. Then tomorrow, I become a wife and a warrior. Outside, the wind howled across the broken land, but inside, something new had taken root. Not fear, not loneliness, but something stronger, a bond born not of love, but of choice. Mark's home looked the same on the outside. A rusted shelter, a broken fence, a lonely station on a forgotten moon. But inside, it had changed. Walls were reinforced with spare metal. The roof was sealed tight. A hidden sensor beeped gently above the door. Sarian helped him every day. She lifted, repaired, connected wires, even learned to load the old plasma rifle. Her hands were small, but steady. The children learned too. Mark didn't treat them like glass. He showed Tovin how to scan, for motion and where to hide if trouble came. He taught Rila how to press the emergency beacon and use her voice to call for help. This isn't just a home anymore, Mark said. It's a shield. Sarian nodded. And we're the ones holding it. They didn't speak about marriage. Again, not with flowers or vows. But every time she handed him a tool, every time he served the children food first, it was clear. They were already something more. Then one quiet morning, it happened. A low hum outside. Mark looked up from his workbench. That's not wind. The scanner blinked red, motion detected. Sarian grabbed the rifle. Tovin pulled Rila into the hidden wall compartment and covered her with a blanket, just like Mark had taught him. Mark stepped outside, slowly. A transport ship hovered just above the ground. It was small, black and unmarked. From it stepped a tall, lean alien with silver eyes and a polished coat. He walked with the confidence of someone who'd broken many lives and slept well after. Mark raised his voice. You're not welcome here. The stranger smiled coldly. I've come for what's mine. Inside, Sarian's hand tightened on the rifle. She recognized him. His name was Velk, a traitor, a trafficker. One of the first who offered to buy her after her husband was taken. She stepped outside, calm but unshaken. You never owned me, she said. Velk chuckled. No, but you belonged to someone who owed me. Then take it up with the dead, Mark growled. Velk's eyes shifted. You shelter her, you claim her. I married her, Mark said without blinking. She's my wife now. And the children are mine. Velk's smile faded. You think a human law means anything to me? No, Mark said, well, but this does. He lifted the plasma rifle and aimed it at Velk's heart. Behind him, Sarian raised her weapon too, and from the shadows, Tovin stepped out, holding a homemade slingshot. Just in case. Velk looked at the three of them. One man, one woman, one child. Not soldiers, not fighters, just a family. But something in their eyes made him pause. They were done running. He stepped back toward his ship. Don't get too comfortable, he said. Kindness doesn't stop bullets. No, Sarian replied, but it gives us something worth dying for. The ship lifted off without another word. Dust blew across the yard. Silence returned. Mark lowered his rifle. Sarian did too. Then he looked at her and said softly, We don't run anymore. She nodded. We stand. And together, with dust in their hair and courage in their hearts, they stepped back inside the home they now shared, not by chance, but by choice. The threat was gone, for now. But the memory of Velk's voice still echoed in Mark's mind. Sarian had gone quiet again. The children sensed the change in the air. That night, as the wind moved across the desert, Mark sat outside near the fire pit. He stared into the flames. Sarian stepped out silently and sat across from him. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then she asked, Why did you live out here, Mark? Why so far from others? Mark's jaw tightened. His eyes stayed on the fire. No one ever asked me that, he said. I'm not like others, she whispered. He nodded. I was once part of a crew, he began, fixing things on outer colonies. I was good at it, got promoted, wore a badge. She listened closely. I had a woman, he continued. We weren't married, didn't need to be, we just knew. His voice grew low. But one day her name came up on a trade route. A small ship vanished near a pirate zone. I begged command to send a team. They said no. Sarian's eyes softened. They said she was just a citizen, not important enough. He looked at Sarian. I took a shuttle anyway, found the wreck, she wasn't on it. Sarian gently asked, Did you ever find her? He shook his head. Just a ring. It floated inside her cabin. I took it. Quit my job. Left everything. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small silver band. Not beautiful, not expensive, but real. Sarian stared at it, then back at him. She meant everything to you, she said. She was the last person who believed in me, Mark replied. Until you. Silence. But you saved me, Sarian said. You saved my children. You gave us more than shelter. You gave us hope. Mark looked up. You gave me something too, Sarian. Something I didn't think I'd ever feel again. What's that? She asked. He smiled faintly. Purpose. She reached across the fire and placed her hand gently over his. Then let's build something with that purpose, she whispered. Mark didn't pull away. He held her hand, not as a stranger, not as a protector, but as something more. Inside, Tovin watched from the small window. He didn't understand everything they said, but he smiled anyway. For the first time since his father died, he saw someone care about his mother, and that made him feel safe, stronger. Outside, under the quiet stars, two people who had lost everything began to build something new. Not out of romance, not out of need, but out of quiet, hard-earned trust. The Days passed quietly. For once the children laughed without looking over their shoulders. Sarian began to hum again as she cooked. Mark, though still quiet, smiled more often. The home didn't just feel safe, it felt full. Until the scanner beeped. Again. Mark froze. It was the same signal. Low hover, no ID tag. Sarian stepped into the room, eyes sharp. They're back? Mark grabbed his rifle and checked the battery. One ship, smaller this time. Sarian turned to the children. Hide, like we practiced. Rila and Tovin ran to the wall hatch without speaking. This time they weren't scared. They were ready. Mark opened the front door and stepped out into the harsh wind. A sleek black transport hovered over the field. From it, Velk stepped down. But he wasn't alone. 2 guards followed him, both armed. They weren't traitors. They were hunters. Velk shouted over the wind. I gave you a warning, human. Mark didn't raise his weapon. Yet. You were warned, too, Mark said. She's not yours? Velk smiled coldly. She was promised. Her husband owed me. She's mine by debt. She belongs to no one. Sarian stepped beside Mark, holding her own rifle. But this time, she didn't look afraid. She looked ready. Velk sneered. You'd go to war for her? Mark didn't answer. Sarian did. He is my husband, she said loudly. These are his children now. Velk flinched. The word hit harder than a bullet. Mark is the only one who ever fed us without a price, gave us a home without chains, called my children his without shame. Her voice grew louder, stronger. And I'd rather die as his wife than live as your property. Mark looked at her. He didn't need words. He just nodded once and lifted the rifle. The guards moved. Too slow. Sarian fired first. The blast hit the ground in front of them. A warning. Mark stepped forward. Leave, or next time we don't miss. Velk stared, then he turned. Cowardice was in his bones. He only chased the weak, and today, they were no longer weak. He left without another word. Dust rose behind his ship. Silence returned. Mark lowered his rifle. Sarian lowered hers too. Then, before walking back inside, she looked at him and smiled. You were right, she said softly. Sometimes you choose family. He smiled back. Sometimes family finds you. Rila and Tovin rushed out of the hiding hatch and hugged them both. Rila looked up at Sarian. Is he really our papa now? Sarian nodded. Mark knelt and pulled them both into his arms. If you'll have me, Tovin said. We already did. That night they sat around the heater, eating together, warm, safe, complete. No fancy ceremony. No glowing rings. Just 4 souls who had survived the cold of space and found light in each other. Sarian called him husband again, quietly. But this time, it wasn't for protection. It was because she meant it.